Why, hello everybody. Welcome to the Zia Cooking Kitchen. I'm so glad you guys are here today because we are going to be making something fun and delicious. We are going to be creating pinto beans. That's right, pinto beans. Anytime you ever go to a restaurant, you're always going to get pinto beans and rice with your plate. One thing I know about pinto beans is that they can be a delicious meal. They're affordable, and I'm going to show you how to make them delicious in your kitchen. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Before I jump into all those ingredients, I want to make sure you click subscribe, and I want to tell you thank you so much for joining me all the time in the kitchen. I have loved all the feedback I've gotten, and let's get started. When you came into my kitchen today, I was already busy, and I'm doing what's called cleaning beans. Now, cleaning beans can be mysterious for people, and they often wonder, what are you really doing? So what we're doing today is we're working with frijoles pintos, which are our pinto beans, and we are going to be starting with our cleaning process. And what that means is we're going to be taking out what I call the duds, the wrinklies, the half ones, and the uglies. Yep, I have names for all of them. So what we're basically doing is we are going through our beans in the sorting process, and these are the ones that I removed. We're looking at beans that are shriveled, that are half, or that look like they're broken. So that's something that I really want you to look at. And these beans here are completely cleaned and they're ready to go. So our next step after cleaning the beans is I'm going to put them in my colander and I'm going to rinse them very, very well. Usually 2 or 3 times, make sure the water runs clean. Then I'm going to add them to my crock pot. Now before I jump in with the next step, I want to talk a little bit about the crock pot and why Carrie always uses it for her beans. Now in southern New Mexico, you know it gets hot as heck, and it is something that we always try to lean on is our slow cookers if possible. Now in the winter, and we have very mild winters here, but I wouldn't mind running a pressure cooker or a Dutch oven on the stovetop for 4 to 6 hours. But because of the heat and the way that we work here in Las Cruces, a lot of times we'll lean on our either pressure cookers or our slow cookers. And some people even use the Instapot. So that is why I'm using the crock pot today. The second tip I'm going to tell you is when we add our beans to our crock pot, we're going to be adding in boiling water. Now, I don't soak my beans, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but I do want you guys to know that the reason I add in the hot boiling water directly to the crock pot with my beans is because it speeds up the process by up to an hour. It also allows those beans to soak in very quickly, and it softens the outer hull or the shell of the bean. That way it eliminates the soaking overnight process because we're adding in that boiling water immediately. So that is something that I recommend. The second thing I do is, because we are going to be using 3 cups of beans today, that feeds my family. My granny has always told me that 1 pound of beans can feed 10 people. And I'll tell you what, when you get this crock pot full of beans, it is a lot of beans. So when we're making our beans to get started, this is probably going to feed my family for today. We're going to make some fancy style beans with some table chili. But we're also going to have some beans left over for tostadas and burritos, so that's exciting too. Boy, I talk a lot. Let's get cooking, all right? So we took those beans, they've been rinsed, we added them to our crock pot with 7 cups of boiling water. Now, I went ahead and I'm going to show you how I flavor up our beans and make them delicious. So let's go ahead and fire up the skillet. Now, I took the time to cook my bacon. There are a couple of different ways of making bacon beans, but since I cook in my family, some of the crew that comes that sits and dines at my table, they don't eat meat. So I always try to add that in separately. So I cook my bacon and I have the fat rendered down, and it comes to about 2 tablespoons, and that's where we're going to start cooking what I call our aromatics. This is how we're going to make those flavorful beans. So what we're going to do is we have this turned on, and as you can see, I have about 2 tablespoons of that rendered bacon fat that's in there. And to that, I am going to simply be adding in some coarsely chopped white onion. You can also use yellow onion if you'd like. I have 1 jalapeno, and on the jalapeno I went ahead and I removed the stem and I put a slit down the side. I'm leaving the seeds and the membrane inside. That's going right into my bacon grease. And I have 2 or 3 cloves of garlic, and I'm not gonna lie, I have 4 cloves of garlic, and I'm putting those in the pan because I love garlic. It is so healthy for us, and it makes a delicious broth that those beans are gonna be cooking in. So we'll go ahead and add those to the bacon fat as well. Now, in my family, every family has different ways of making beans. It's always been something that we find a little bit of a celery leaf part that we put into our crock pot. It gives us a great, delicious flavor, and that's something that I do. I one time asked my granny, why do we put a celery stalk in the pot with beans, Granny? And she said, Mija, that's the way my mom did it. Whew, I never asked again, and I've always done it since then. So we'll go ahead and we'll toss that in. Now, as you can see, these are frying lightly, just getting a little bit of a bloom on the onions and the garlic. And then we're going to add this directly to the crock pot. We're going to include all of the bacon grease, and we're going to use these vegetables, and they're going to go into the crock pot. And that's where we're going to pull down a lot of the flavor that goes into making those beans. That is so lovely smelling. I just love that smell. So real simple, we're going to go ahead and add that to our crock pot. You want to be very careful when adding that directly in to your bean and water mixture. Yes, those are looking delicious. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this pan one more time because I like to be thrifty in the kitchen. This is a really affordable meal. We're watching our pennies and our dollars, so it's really important that we try to keep costs down if we can. And these delicious beans, oh, they are going to be heavenly. So in our skillet, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make what I call our table chili. So right here, you see we're working with some really delicious chopped chili. It's already been roasted and peeled. I have some tomato, I have some onion, and I have some garlic. So all of that is going directly into my skillet. And this is one way I like to prepare green chili to go onto the table to be served with beans. Rather than serving it with a cold salsa, I like to have a nice warm chili available at the table for my family and my friends to add to their chili. Go ahead and stir that around for a minute, and then let's talk about spices. One thing I've always been taught or told to do is to not add any salt or spices to my beans until they're cooked and they're soft. That is something that I was taught to do. So what I've also learned along the way is that we can always spice up everything that we're going to add on top of the beans. That makes them delicious. So today I'm using some salt, some pepper. I'm using a little bit of a Mexican oregano because I love that in my table chili. Now, when I use the term table chili, what am I referring to? I'm referring to a chili salsa that's going to be warm. It has just the 4 ingredients that I told you about. And I'm going to serve that on the table with my beans, and it is going to be absolutely delicious. You can see how gorgeous those colors look, and that smell. It is heavenly. I love it. Moving these out of the way. That looks delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cover that for just a moment. And I'm going to turn my attention back to those delicious beans that we're making. Now, you notice that I used the bacon fat in there, but I went ahead and when I cooked the bacon, I drained all the fat out, left a couple tablespoons in the skillet, put a couple tablespoons away to use for another meal that I'm going to make. And I have a feeling I'm going to be frying potatoes in them. And then I have some grated cheese that's ready to go because there's no way you're going to come into Carrie's kitchen and not get some queso on your food, especially with beans. Now, one thing I do like to add to my beans, and I always add it in towards the end, is a couple of pats of salted butter. It gives that really creamy, silky taste, and I do love to add that in towards the end of our cooking process. Now, I think I've talked non-stop for the last several minutes, but one thing I didn't say is that we want to keep these beans on. We're going to, after we add our water and add them to our pot, we're going to put them on and we're going to cook them on high for 4 hours You always want to make sure that there keeps at least 1 inch of water or of the bean broth over your beans. If you need to add more, make sure that you always come back in and add it with hot or almost boiling water. If you add cold water to your beans, they're going to shock and it's going to make a harder or tougher bean. And remember, we want these beans to be absolutely silky and delicious. I'm going to go ahead and drop that butter in now. Give these a lovely little toss. And those are coming together looking absolutely delicious. Now, some people talk about beans and they say, I heard if you soak them that you can remove some of the gassy properties. Let me talk a little bit about that. Beans hold a lot of fiber. So one thing I do want to recommend, and I tell everybody this all the time, the more fiber you eat, the less gassy effects you get. So make sure that you incorporate beans as often as you can. They're a great way to substitute for meat. Again, we're looking at our budget. We're working very much together to make this an affordable time for us to eat well, spend our money on our extra fixings, and leave our basics there to be the main part of our meal, such as ground beef, pinto beans, and potatoes. Looks like our chili's done, guys, and those beans are already ready. So let's go ahead and make a bowl and let's see how delicious they taste. Now, for those of you who don't like to add meat, you can go ahead and you can skip the process of adding in the bacon fat, and you don't have to put bacon on top, but it's something that I absolutely love. Now, after your beans are cooked and they've gotten soft and delicious, you can do a couple of things. If you'd like to, you can smash your beans, and I recommend that if you're going to be making tostadas or bean and cheese burritos. And that's something you can do. I like to do what I call a half mash, where I just mash them up halfway. But just for today's sake, I wanted to show you how beautiful my beans are. They are absolutely delicious. Now we'll go ahead. At this point, we got that table chili ready to go. That also looks heavenly. It smells delicious. Oh. I've got some friends coming over to join me for lunch, and then we're going to use the rest of the beans for dinner tonight. So let's go ahead and show you how delicious these look. We've got these hot steaming beans, and of course I've got to add some of that delicious cheese in there. A little bit of bacon. Oh my gosh, that looks delicious. And let's fire up some of that chili, because I love spicing up that chili. Looking at those delicious beans, smelling them, it's delicious. I love it. I am ready to dive into this, and I'd like to show you what a happy girl looks like eating delicious New Mexico pinto beans. Welcome back to the Zia Cooking Kitchen. I look forward to seeing you guys again.